Hi everybody, it's great to be back here again on Itamar. It's Friday and we want to get right down to our Torah lesson on Parashat Yitro with just 2 words. We had an amazing week about Tu B'Shvat. It was amazing planting trees, and we had people from all over Israel that came and planted, and we had our dear friends out there from America, friends of Itamar, that came to plant, and we, as a matter of fact, we put on a movie on our web pages. You'll find it on Itamar Support Group Facebook, or Tour Itamar Support Israel webpage, or our Friends of Itamar webpage. We'll put it on today. So it's together with the Torah lessons. So please follow up and keep up with Itamar. We really love your support, and you're doing amazing things to really change the face of Israel. And there's no doubt Itamar will be a great city one day in Israel, and it's a beautiful, beautiful place. And wow, we feel really a big, big support group growing behind us all the time. And keep up the good work. We love you all. But let's get right down to our Torah lesson. This week's Torah lesson talks about Parashat Yitro, Matan Torah, receiving Torah, and there's so much to talk about. Wow, the Torah is infinite, and it's divine light, of course. It doesn't end, and our job is just to connect to that amazing light and just fill our being with this beautiful Torah. I want to open up with a verse in Psalms, in Psalm 68, verse 19, and the verse says like this: Alita lamarom, you went above. Shavita Shevi, you captured some kind of captive. It's referring to Moshe Rabbeinu. King David is writing about him. Moshe Rabbeinu goes up to the heavens and he takes something captive. And what is this thing he takes captive? It's the Torah. Lakachta matanot, you took gifts. Ba'adam, you brought it down to man. Af sorim lishkon yalukim. Not only that, what else did you do? You actually brought this Torah down to those who rebel against God, go against His word. You place this Torah in the tabernacle. So here we see some kind of criticism against Moshe Rabbeinu from the angels, really. King David is communicating a verse here about the angels, that how they're upset that Moshe Rabbeinu is bringing Torah down to man. And we have to understand what this is all about. And to develop this more, let's go on to another midrash. Well, what we read right now was a verse in the Psalms, and now we're going to read a midrash. We all know what a midrash is, of course. We've mentioned it many times in our Torah lessons. It's a very, very deep way of our rabbis explaining very concepts, Torah concepts, in all kinds of metaphors or other ways that they usually in a story form or almost like a cartoon form, just to have a very, very deep message brought down in that secret way, and they try to figure out what the real meaning is behind it, because they're teaching us very, 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 very deep concepts. And the midrash actually develops this whole verse that I just mentioned. I'm going to read the midrash to you over here, which begins like this. Okay, let me just get it over here. Mao alita. The midrash says, what does it mean? Moshe Rabbeinu goes up. Alita lamarom. You went above. Nitaleta. Moshe Rabbeinu, of course, was in a deep prophecy when he went up, complete prophetic level, the highest prophetic level that he reached, going up to the heavens. You actually touched angels. Moshe Rabbeinu was in the upper worlds, the highest of spiritual worlds, and in this prophecy of receiving Torah, he was in the area. He was in the, as we say, he was amongst angels. That's one explanation. You went above. No other human being was able to do what Moshe did, going all the way up there in the angelic world. And then the Midrash continues to describe what is Moshe going to bring down now, these tablets. Amar Rabbi Berechia, Rabbi Berechia says, the luchot, the tablets were 6 tefachim. 6 tefachim. What is a tefach? A tefach is this. It's a fist about. We put 6 of those together, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We get around half a meter, and that was the size, the length of the tefachim. Now he says something even more, a little more details over here. Kiv Yachol, so to speak. Hayu biyad mishama vayaolam shnei tefachim. So to speak, 2 tefachim were in God's hands. Of course, God doesn't have hands, God forbid. But it's referring to something, as we spoke before. God is holding one end of the tablets, and his hands are 2 tefachim wide. Moses' hand is also 2 tefachim. He's holding the other end like that. And there were 2 tefachim mafrishim ben yad liyad. Between the 2 hands, there were 2 tefachim in the middle. What does this mean? And of course, if we explain it on even a simple way, but a little bit, we look at a little bit depth, we see that on one hand the Torah is above there with Hashem, of course, that's Hashem's light, that's the infinite light, which has to now come from the Ein Sof, from the infinite, to become enough in a way that we can actually tap onto it, to go down to our world. We cannot never understand what God's all about, only what God shows us, because God is infinite. As we say now in Hebrew, there is no thought can encompass the God in any way, only of course where Hashem shows us and allows us to understand Him. And here is the two hands above, which is the distance between the two, is it shows us that that's something that we can never tap onto. Only in between, God allows, through a special spiritual way, which is not, this lesson we're not going to talk about the sphirot, the spiritual 10 spheres, and how the different partsofim, as we say, allow for the divine light to come down to the spiritual worlds that we can actually tap into. But this is really symbolized by this whole God holding one end and Moses holding the other and bringing it down to earth. And we see there's a struggle here. The Torah has to come down to the earth. And then the Midrash goes on to say, another explanation. Alit el-marom, you went above. Shavita Shevi, you took a captive. You took some kind of captivity. Usually when a person goes and buys something or takes something from, he goes to a city and he purchases something, he gets a hold of a nice present, whatever he gets. He puts it in a bag, no one pays attention, this guy, everyone else goes in and out. Moshe, what did it say over here? Moshe Rabbeinu goes up to the heavens. Moshe takes the Torah that everyone's eyes are upon, the entire cosmos, universe. And what does that mean? It's also, you look at it in a deep way, the Torah, you can't put the Torah and hide it somewhere. The Torah is so powerful, it's the divine light coming down to earth. It reaches every corner and every facet of our existence, and therefore cannot be hidden in any way. Let's go on. The Midrash says, could it be since Moshe Rabbeinu actually took a hold of the, up there in the heavens, he got this Torah, it says he took it, could it be free, without work? Talmud lomar, lakachta matanot badam, belekicha nitena lo. No. Ki lekach tov natati lachem, is another explanation, but ki lekicha, with a taking, in Hebrew, I have to understand concepts. Taking in Hebrew, in lamed chuf chet, in Hebrew means to acquire something. Acquire it. Not just getting it for free. Acquiring could be different ways. Sometimes it's payment with money. Otherwise, sometimes it's acquiring it through hard work. Here it's through hard work. We'll see the Midrash stresses that fact. As a matter of fact, goes on to say, Yechol yeh chayav litein lo damim. Did he have to pay for it? Talmud lomar matanot v'matanan inalo. On one hand, it's a gift. So on one hand, he had to acquire it, but it wasn't for money. So how did he acquire it? Obviously, it's a spiritual acquisition of great sweat and study. And we all know, those of us who study Torah, we can study from the morning to the night, and we have to sweat very, very hard to understand, especially when we're studying our deep oral law and our Talmud and halacha. How much do you have to sweat over sometimes one little Tosfot, one little Rashi to really understand what he's trying to say to us. And this is the beauty of the Torah. Ki lekach tov natati lachem. I have given you a great acquisition, a good acquisition. And let's go on. And now we're getting to some really difficult things over here. Bota sha'ah. At that hour, bikshu malachei sharet, the angels of heaven wanted to livgoa b'Moshe. They wanted to actually hurt him. They wanted to knock him out. What did poor Moshe do? Asabo HaKadosh Baruch Hu klasterin shel panav shel Moshe domel Avraham. What did Hashem do? He took Moshe's face and he put a mask on, made some kind of him look like Abraham, Avraham Avinu. What happened? Moshe Rabbeinu was in trouble with the angels. He had a problem here, so Hashem quickly changed his looks to something else, to Abraham. אמר להם הקדוש ברוך הוא, אתם מתביישים ממנו לא זהו שירדתם אצלו ואכלתם בתוך ביתו. God says, Mr. Angels over here, you're not embarrassed? You came down to Abraham's tent, he gave you food. Don't you remember when that happened? How can you go ahead and hurt him? Kill him. אמר הקדוש ברוך הוא למשה, לא ניתנה לך תורה אלא בזכות אברהם, שנאמר לקחת מתנות באדם. This is what Hashem is saying to Moshe Rabbeinu. It's a different meaning of Ba'adam. Of course, it means you brought the Torah down to man, but another explanation is that Be'adam, with man, which means with the merit of Abraham, who was a real gever, as we say, a real man, in his merit the Torah was given. Wow. That's the end of this midrash. And, you know, understand what this means. What does it mean in the merit of Abraham the Torah was given? And this whole thing of Hashem having sort of to hide Moshe Rabbeinu from the angels and actually make it look like he's someone else, and he wasn't him, he was someone else. Obviously, it connects. Moshe Rabbeinu is connecting all the way back to Abraham. Here we are, the Jewish people, many years has passed since Abraham, and now it's bringing it all back to this first Abraham who discovered Hashem. It's connecting this whole thing to Abraham. What is Abraham's existence all about? In order to wrap things up and make it a little bit more, put all these things that we've been discussing, put it all together, I want to bring down another source in the Talmud in Yoma, which deals with Yom Kippur. And overall, of course, we all know that the Talmud is full of many, many different things, and it talks about, in this particular passage, about the man, the bread that the Jewish people, of course, ate for 40 years in the desert. There's a very interesting discourse in the Talmud about it. Just want to bring part of that. The Talmud brings down Tanu Rabbanan. We learned in a Braita, Lechem Abiri Machal Ish. It says again in Psalms 88, Lechem Abiri. It's describing the man as Lechem Abiri. What is Lechem, bread? Abirim referring to noble bread. What is it all about? Of course, the Gemara is going to talk about it. Lechem shemalachei hasharet ochlim oto. Bread that the angels of above eat. Divrei Rabbi Akiva. This is what Rabbi Akiva describes the man. What the Jewish people ate in the desert, the man was angelic bread. That's what Rabbi Akiva says. When these words were told to Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Akiva said, he says, Akiva, go tell Akiva, Ta'ita, you made a mistake. Why did Rabbi Akiva make a mistake? Could it be that angels eat bread? But it says, you know, that when Moshe Rabbeinu was up in the heavens, we know he didn't eat any water, he didn't eat any food. So angels don't eat. So what is this all about? So what does Rabbi Shmuel explain? It refers to that this was the bread. Abirim sounds in Hebrew like avarim. Avarim in Hebrew means avar is a limb. We know that we have 248 limbs in our body, and 365 gidim, sinews. We know that the 613 commandments that we do have spiritual lights, and they all reflect within each in our physical existence. But anyway, the man gave power to our 248, the positive commandments, the limbs of our body, and that's why it's called abirim, in Hebrew, eval, meaning a limb. And that's how, and every bit was absorbed, which means there was no room for any waste. The man was so perfect that there were no waste left over at all. So then, right away, the Gemara asks the question: how could it be? It says in Deuteronomy, "V'yatetia lecha ala zaynecha." You have to have part of your equipment in the desert. We know to make the camp holy was to have a shovel to cover up the waste. How can there be waste? So the Gemara gives two explanations. One, that they actually, when the food they bought from the nations that were in the desert, they would have waste from that. Or another explanation is that no, even the food they bought from the nations would be swallowed up by the angelic bread, the man, and therefore the waste only happened when they sinned. The waste came forth only when those who sinned, then they would have waste products. Okay, now in order to wrap this all up, we have to, I'd like to bring down some words of the beautiful Shem Shmuel. Shem Shmuel is again from the Hasidic line of he was the second Hasidic master in the Sogachov dynasty. As we know, Sogachov is a city in Poland, southeast of Warsaw. Jews lived there 600 years until the Holocaust. But anyway, the Rebbe Sogachov, Shmuel Borenstein, was the son of the famous Avnei Nezer, of Avram Borenstein, who was the grandson. He was the grandson of Rebbe Mikotsk. Oh, amazing! This brings back in your heart. It pinches you a little. Think about these great Hasidic masters and how such beautiful Torah. But in the book the Shem Shmuel, he again brings down these midrashim and he explains something very, very beautiful, which I'd like to wrap up over here. which will try to put this all together. And he talks about, again, first about Abraham. What is this whole idea of Hashem having to paint Moshe Rabbeinu's face with a mask of Abraham? What is it all about? And first he mentions the connection with man, with the special man again, with the fact that the first place began, according to Midrash, the man came down, was a place called Alush. And what does Abraham say to Sarah? He says, Lushi, Alush, Lushi, Asu Got. He says that when the angels came to Sarah, run and prepare bread. So, Abraham's house, in a way, as we know, is everything that they ate was a spiritual bread. And what does it mean? Of course, people eat a physical thing. Eating bread, you have to survive. We're human beings. But one of the most powerful concepts of Judaism is to understand that everything physical is spirituality. And most of the time depends on what kind of human being we are. Because if we're going to let our physical take over, then the spiritual is going to be so hidden within, it's going to be almost like animalistic. And an animal has spirituality also, but it's not, you don't realize, because everything, the way it behaves is so physical. And the more a human being purifies himself and much more he taps into spirituality, then the spiritual begins to grow. The light from within, the spiritual light, takes over the physical. The more and more spiritual we get, eventually the physical is wrapped up. It's only like a garment, but it barely is felt because our spirituality is so powerful. And that's really what Abraham was all about. The fact that people came from all over and he gave them food and he hosted guests from all over the place and he was teaching them about Hashem and the world and they ate, they partake of his meals. Everything was spiritual. It was such a spiritual existence and for them it uplifted them completely. This is what Abraham's being was all about. And the whole concept over here of Moshe Rabbeinu wrestling with the angels were afraid that here Moshe Rabbeinu has to bring Torah down to the world, has to bring it down to the Jewish nation, and human beings, and what can happen to the Torah? They end up covering it over with husks, and where's the Torah going to go? But Hashem, brought the angels back. Look at Abraham. Look what the level that Abraham was on, that he was able to make his whole life, his whole being so spiritual that it took over the physical world. That the Torah can be brought down to this world and remain its holiness. Of course, Moshe Rabbeinu, is obviously on the high level of Abraham, the spiritual level of Moshe, but they were talking to Moshe Rabbeinu again as the one who's bringing the Torah to the Jewish nation, as a nation, as a whole, and amongst the nation there are all kinds of levels of people, of course, and they were afraid of that. But God was saying, no, everyone came from the root of Abraham. This is the root that's within. Every one of Am Yisrael has the ability to take this holy Torah and let it take over his physical. And this is the level that we all can reach if we only allow our physical existence to be, again, to give into the spiritual world. And that is so powerful. The message of Abraham with their whole thing of the angels. The angels actually took of the bread that they offered them. They didn't feel anything was physical about it, because as angels being so spiritual in the spiritual world. Of course, we're just right now, even this whole lesson, we're reflecting on very, very deep concepts, but again, trying to make them a little bit simpler. But it is so deep to understand this whole concept of Torah really coming down to earth and having to uplift the entire universe, that we're so surrounded by our physicality and so taken over by physicality. And it's so hard to pull away, but we can. The more and more we strive for spiritual existence, the connection to Hashem, we rectify our physical beings as well. And this is the important message that comes out of this 6th portion. This again, with the Shem Shmuel, I just did in a very, very concise way, and he goes off into many different directions, but again, just a little flavor of his amazing words, and connecting to the Midrashim that we brought down and spoke about, and let it be that we allow our spiritual being to take over our physical and to rule our physical. As human beings, we have to remain physical, of course, and we're not angels, but we can control our physical and we can really uplift it to the highest level, the level that Abraham represented. That in his bread, it was a spiritual existence. It was felt the spirituality, just like on Shabbat right now it's coming in, and we know we sit down there and we have our joints and we have our whatever we make. We shouldn't let the physical take over. We have to let the spiritual feeling of Shabbat and let it come in and take over, and try to have a spiritual experience through our Sudat Shabbat, our Shabbat meals, and we have a lot more to talk about in this realm. But anyway, have an amazing Shabbat. I love you all, and we'll see you again soon. Shabbat Shalom.